now back to domestic politics here in Britain, because whilst a lot is being made of the supposed civil war within Reform UK, after the party suspended Rupert Lowe, do the British public really know who Mr Lowe is? Well, a surprise poll from the polling company JL Partners claims that only 14%, 14 of the British public can identify Mr Lowe, while astonishingly, even 71% of Reform UK voters don't appear to know who Mr Lowe is. It's quite an eye-popping poll. Well, let's get the opinions now of the man who did it. It's the co-founder of JL Partners, James Johnson. James, thanks for joining us. So a huge debate has broken out about who should be the leader, who should take control of Reform UK. When it comes down to public recognisability, it appears to be there is only one winner. Tell us your information.
Yeah, I mean, this was a pretty shocking poll. We asked a representative sample of the British public, basically, who is this person? We showed them a picture of Rupert Lowe. We got them to type in their answers. Well, we also counted people who said just Rupert or just Lowe or sort of slightly messed it up like Richard Lowe. We counted those as the answer. And even then, only 14% of the public, and interestingly, only 29% of Reform UK voters could name him. So it's certainly pretty striking. You know, look, it's not that surprising to me because the public are not in the ins and outs of what's going on in politics, especially this far from an election. So they're not likely to know who a backbencher MP is. But clearly, this is getting more resonance on X and Twitter than it is amongst the public as a whole. It is that reminder that X is not real life. Now, one quick caveat, Martin, is that obviously this is not a poll of Reform members. Reform members who are more engaged may have a higher recall of Rupert Lowe, but certainly amongst the voters as a whole, he's not there on the same level as, for example, a Nigel Farage might be.
James Johnson, just to put that in context, do we know about the public recognisability of people like Mr Farage? I mean, how can you compare Mr Farage's identifiability compared to Mr Lowe's? Is there data on that?
Yeah, that is close to 85%. And almost universal amongst Reform UK voters. Look, Nigel Farage has had an advantage, right? He's been around for 20 years in politics and frontline UK politics for more than 10 years. So there is that. But look, you know, this Nigel Farage is seen as the face of Reform UK. A lot of these Reform UK voters who tend to be older, more disengaged from politics, less likely to be sort of, you know, following it very closely, Nigel Farage spoke to them at the election. And my view is, based on this data, based on other data we see, is that Reform UK only got to 5 MPs because of Nigel Farage's reach with voters. Not just awareness, but also a sense that, and I heard it again and again in the election campaign, a sense that he was strong, a sense that he gets things done, a sense that he says it how it is. He's why they got those MPs in 2024. And my view is that he's the only way they get to number 10, because he has that level of reach and appeal to those wider voters. It's very, very, very hard to break through as a new party in UK politics. Literally, no one's done it in more than a century. So, you know, Reform need everything they've got, and their strongest asset is Nigel Farage.
And James Johnson, in as far as the skirmishes that break out in all political parties, how long or how deep do they even resonate with the electorate? I mean, we're about to say have local elections. There could even be a by-elections looking like in Runcorn. Do these skirmishes within parties have much bearing on that? Or actually, is it just about people voting for the party and voting for the figurehead? In this case, appears to be, by your data, Nigel Farage.
Yeah, look, I think infighting does matter. I think if a party's seen as divided, it is not good for that party. I think this is a relatively low salience. What do I mean by that? It's not sort of, you know, at the front of people's minds, as our data shows, so they can get away with it for a little bit, I suspect, Reform. But if this rumbles on for months, years, then that will create a sense that Reform is incompetent. At the moment, they're not there. Actually, the latest voting intention polls are actually showing on average Reform 1 point up compared to before the row broke out. So we're not anywhere near there yet, but it's always important for a party to be seen as united rather than divided. And Reform Nigel Farage will be hoping they can leave this one behind.
And James Johnson, you raise an excellent point about Twitter X not being the real world. After all, if it was, then we'd have remained in the European Union. We'd have Jeremy Corbyn as a Prime Minister. We'd have had Hillary Clinton as a President of the USA. I think it's fair to say, James Johnson, that X can be its own little micro world, its own bubble, and not actually representative of the great British public out there who don't spend all their time on social media.
Absolutely. X, Twitter, Facebook, these places are not the real world. As you say, if it was, Remain would have won, Corbyn would be PM on a landslide. A lot of the comment out there on social media, amongst online profiles, particularly on the right at the moment, reminds me of those Corbynista years when you'd post something that was pro-conservative or pro-reform or pro-Brexit party at the time, and you would get inundated in the replies by people who supported Jeremy Corbyn. But at the election, he took Labour to one of its worst ever election showings. So absolutely, X is not real life. That applies to the right as well as to the left.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you very, very much for sharing it with us. And that's the co-founder of JL Partners, James Johnson. Fascinating poll there on the recognisability of political figures, and also, is social media the real world? And now then, to the Reform Party, the Civil War, because while a lot is being made of the supposed civil war within Reform UK, after the party suspended Rupert Lowe, do the British public even know who Mr Lowe is? Well, according to a poll by the polling company JL Partners, only 14% of the British public could identify him, and actually only 29% of Reform voters could identify him. And I'm joined now in the studio by the commentator at the Mail on Sunday, Dan Hodges, who wrote a column on this precise topic earlier on. Dan Hodges, welcome to the show. Got to say, I choked on my croissant this morning when I read this, because you've come out in support of Nigel Farage. Why?
Well, I'm not supporting Nigel Farage. I'm just writing, as ever, about the reality of the political situation. And there's an old adage which says, if you come at the king, you'd better not miss. And the reality is Rupert Lowe has launched what has effectively been a leadership challenge against Nigel Farage. And I think it's quite clear to anybody, who observes politics apart from Rupert Lowe and his rather small group of online social media supporters, that's going to fail. Because whether you like Nigel Farage or loathe Nigel Farage, you can't decry his political success, certainly over the last few months since the election, and you can't sort of decry the fact that he basically is the face of reform. And Rupert Lowe's sort of very misguided and rather egotistical attacks on him, they're frankly, they're not going to go anywhere. I mean, you quoted the poll showing I think it's only 14% of the British public know who Rupert Lowe is. I'm surprised it's as high as that. I mean, I said earlier in the week I thought it would be about 10%. But the reality is, Rupert Lowe has, for whatever reason, has attacked Nigel Farage and decided to go to war with Nigel Farage, and he's going to lose that war, quite clearly.
Now, Mr Lowe does have a lot of supporters. If you go on social media, you can see that. Do you think this is one of those cases? We spoke to the polling company earlier on who said that the confusion here is that social media isn't the real world, X isn't planet Earth. And in your column today, Dan, it's fair to say you've been pretty scathing about Mr Lowe. You said he's the classic type of man who has a legend in his own living room, putting the boot into a man who is, to be fair, very, very popular with the reform activists.
Well, he may be popular with a certain sort of faction amongst reform activists. I'm not sure he's that popular amongst reform voters, and I'm not entirely sure he's that popular. Well, I'm pretty certain he's not that popular amongst the electorate as a whole, because as you pointed out, the electorate as a whole don't know who he is. I mean, I think you've put your finger on it, though, that this is the issue. I think we all know where this started from. There was a spat, a very high-profile spat a couple of months ago between Nigel Farage and Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, Elon Musk sent a tweet out saying that he quite liked Rupert Lowe. And frankly, from that moment on, and this isn't hindsight, I said it at the time, Rupert Lowe's head was turned by that endorsement, and Rupert Lowe has made the mistake, as a number of politicians in the past have done, and no doubt will do in the future, of thinking, as you pointed out, that social media, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, is representative of the country as a whole. And it isn't. And Rupert Lowe decided on the back of that endorsement from Musk that he was going to start throwing his weight around. As I said, he did an interview with my colleague Andrew Pearce a week ago, which is kind of what finally brought everything to a head, in which he was, very disparaging about Nigel Farage, and as I said, launched what was, a thinly guarded sort of leadership bid. And I think Rupert Lowe is finding out that, the support he thought he had more widely in the country just doesn't exist. It's a social media mirage.
You've been around politics a long time. You've seen politicians fight like rats in sacks for many, many years. You've seen them come, you've seen them go. Do you think there's a way back for Rupert Lowe within the Reform Party, or do you think this might be a sort of terminal scrap here?
No, I think it's terminal, and the only basis for that is that Nigel Farage himself has said there's no way back. I mean, and I think this will be the test. Rupert Lowe and some of Rupert Lowe's supporters say he has this wide support in the country. I think Rupert Lowe's got to test that now. I think Rupert Lowe's got to go off if he does have political ambitions. If he does think he speaks for the country, he has a political platform. He's an MP. He can, set up his own party and whatever. He can rally Elon Musk, others to his cause, and let's see how he does. But I mean, it's pretty clear he doesn't have any future left in reform.
And you say in your article, the fight between Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe is fascinating blood sports, but enjoy it while you can, because it's only a matter of time before Farage sends him to the canvas.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's already sent him to the canvas. I mean, I think you see today, I haven't seen anybody seriously arguing anymore that Rupert Lowe is going to come out of this struggle with Nigel Farage on top. I mean, we're having this, again, we had it again, the demeaning spectacle of Rupert Lowe sending these public tweets, well, effectively, begging Nigel Farage to have lunch with him and sit down with him and somehow bring him back into the fold. That's quite clearly not going to happen. And I think in a couple of weeks' time we'll have moved on from this, and I think Rupert Lowe will be, another sort of footnote in British political history.
Okay, Dan Hodges, a scathing analysis there. Thank you very, very much.